Similar to other works of literature, Oscar Wilde uses intertextual elements such as mistaken identity, seen in works like Shakespeare and even modern film, along with concepts of status being everything and false representation of oneself to mock Victorian-era England. He addresses these concepts through satire and wit, creating a trivial comedy for serious people. Oscar Wilde was an Irish writer and poet. He was a very extravagant man and materialistic. He lived an unconventional lifestyle known by everyone, with varying opinions from negative to positive. At the peak of his career, he wrote a book about those he was surrounded by, called The Importance of Being Earnest. Set in the 1890s, the book takes place in both the urban city London and the natural country. The places, polar opposites, both serve to mock high-class society. The city is represented by Gwendolen and Algernon, both high-class members of society, and related to Lady Bracknell, who is surprisingly a woman portrayed with power. Essentially, Oscar Wilde giving Lady Bracknell power contrasts the normal view of women and shows through his opinion. Also representing the city, Algernon serves as a character foil for Jack. Both use Bunburying to get out of social obligations, although Jack is more concerned about respectability. In the country, you have Cecily, who juxtaposes Gwendolyn's city girl being a country girl. While one likes fashion, the other likes nature. Both, however, have the same fantasy of marrying a man named Ernest. Wilde used these characters to point out how appearance-driven and unrealistic Victorian society is. Both females show how women would rather marry someone because of their name or appearance than for actual love. He uses the irony of neither man being earnest in both name or character, along with scenes such as where the two girls describe their Ernest and get into a tiff over who is actually marrying their ideal man.
Because Oscar Wilde calls this a trivial play for serious people, he uses a lot of irony in the way the characters are set up. Neither Algernon or Jack are named Ernest for actually Ernest in general. Therefore, Cecily and Gwendolen are made into jokes because they are fantasizing about marrying a man who is neither Ernest or Ernest. Wilde also uses the old nanny Miss Prism ironically because she is supposed to be this respectable teacher, but really she had a huge secret that carried the plot of the story and pointed out no one was truly who they said. When Jack created a life for himself, Lady Bracknell refused to let him marry Gwendolen, but the second she found out he was Algernon's brother, he was automatically able to marry her. Lady Bracknell here points out the ridiculousness of Victorian society. This point is further supported in her questioning of Jack. She cares about materialistic things such as money or if he smokes, rather than the actual love. Wilde makes several comments on love being for wealth and appearance, with Algernon shifting from, "If you ever get married, which seems to me extremely problematic, you'll be very glad to know Bunbury," to, "Cecily, I am very much hurt indeed to hear you broke it off," where once he didn't want marriage, upon seeing Cecily's beauty, was hurt by the calling off of the engagement.
Two important symbols to look at are double life and food. The double life is the core metaphor in this work. The use of Bunburying for Jack allows him to appear more respectable and also move back and forth as he pleases. His constant use of Ernest symbolizes the general hypocrisy of Victorian mindset in their life and responsibilities. Food is seen constantly being eaten throughout the book, with Algernon eating all the cucumber sandwiches and then with the two men fighting over the muffins. Food is often used as insults between the two girls, with Gwendolen telling Cecily, when offered sugar, that it's not fashionable anymore, and that the cake that is also offered is rarely seen in the best houses. Food also appears to be a substitute for indulgences. As Jack eats the bread and butter, Algernon accuses him of behaving as if he and Gwendolen are already married. Lastly, looking at Wilde's view of women, we don't see the expected, delicate, dependent girls, but instead hard-headed, stubborn Gwendolen and Cecily. During Jack's proposal, Gwendolen takes charge, and Cecily fully assigns Algernon the role of fiancé before even meeting him. Also, they are both set on their beloved being Earnest and refuse to change their mind. This control given to the girls, along with Lady Bracknell's earlier mentioned power, is far from the norms for Victorian-era England, and showed Wilde's higher view of women that was not common at the time.
Oscar Wilde ends this work as he does others, tying up loose ends like where Jack really came from and everyone happily being married. But this ending also shows how, after all the deceit, people of the Victorian era would still fall into a happy fantasy away from reality.